Robinhood recently unveiled a partnership with Kalshi to launch sports betting prediction markets focused on the NFL and college football. It's another headline that's coming out in this arena. FanDuel is going to be partnering with derivatives exchange CME Group on events contracts that are tied to the S&P 500, gold and oil prices, and even economic indicators. Joining us right now to talk about America's relationship with betting is John Cohen. He is the author of 2 books on betting. The most recent was out this year. It's called Losing Big, America's Reckless Bet on Sports Gambling. John, I think it's fair to say this tells us what your opinion is on these things. How do you see the state of America and gambling at this point?
Well, what could possibly go wrong, right? I think the nation has gone all in on gambling really, really quickly just over the last 7 years. And I'm not opposed to gambling by any means. I'm not opposed to maybe even people having access to gambling on their phones. But my concern, and the reason I use the word reckless in the title of the book, is that we've gone in so quickly with so few guardrails protecting people that I think we might be causing unnecessary harm with our sort of new addiction to gambling.
You think this is actually a public health crisis, particularly for young men at this point?
That's right. I mean, 50% of young men, 50% of men between the ages of 18 through 49 have a sports betting app. 60% of high schoolers have gambled within the last year. I think we're getting past the point of, this is about individual responsibility and individual fault, and it's a collective problem, and then it needs to be addressed through systemic solutions, which is why I've sort of moved to this public health lens for fixing the issues that we've caused.
All right, let's talk about the Kalshi and Robinhood partnership first, and then we can get to some of the broader ways that you think that these things should be regulated. What do you think of these latest moves?
I guess it's not surprising, right? Once Kalshi and Robinhood, as you may remember, tried to get into the sports world first on the Super Bowl of last year and sort of got held up at that point, and then did go in on during March Madness. And what this effectively offers, and what I think is so notable about this, is not in a place like New York, actually, but in somewhere like California or Texas, states that do not have legal, licensed state sports betting yet, but effectively do through this gray market sort of backdoor of prediction markets. So I think it was sort of inevitable once they went in on sports in general on Kalshi and Robinhood that we were going to get to the NFL. We were going to get to NFL point spreads. We're probably going to get to parlays. And this is if there's going to be anything that really truly disrupts FanDuel and DraftKings at the top of the sports betting market, it's going to be Kalshi, it's going to be Robinhood or Polymarket when it comes to the U.S.
Kalshi says that it's only beholden to the CFTC. You think that's the case?
They certainly seem to think so. Lots of states have sort of taken up this issue and have claimed that Kalshi and Robinhood are offering gambling and as a result should be responsive to state gambling regulators, not just to the CFTC. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to sort of comment on whether they're correct on the merits. But it sure seems to look a lot like gambling. And if it is gambling, then by my account, it should be regulated by states in addition to possibly the CFTC.
You know, it's not just puritanical people who are thinking some of these things. The American Gaming Association CEO has some choice words for this, too. The industry is already pretty heavy regulated, and I think they're a little angry that, I think his words were something like, if it looks like a bet, if it acts like a bet, then it is a bet, and it should be regulated.
That's right, and the black hole or the loophole that I mentioned is claiming that buying, a bet on the Jets point spread is somehow an investment and somehow a contract or an option rather than just a gamble. And it, as you said, it clearly is just a gamble.
You think some of this was brought about by the pandemic when everybody was kind of locked up at home looking for something to do? In some ways, we saw a lot more meme stock activity, a lot more retail trading that was taking place in the markets. But you also saw a lot of this gambling that really took off, and maybe it got a foothold then.
Absolutely. And I think I've talked to a lot of folks who get into sports betting or get into prediction markets, not actually through sports, but through things like Robinhood. And they sort of develop a gambling mentality, or maybe even crypto too. They develop a gambling mentality, and that leads them, I'm looking for something new to bet on. That brings them to sports, that brings them to prediction markets. Now all of a sudden they're betting on what Mr. Beast will say in his next video or something. And I think you're right, that from a cultural perspective, that really, really took off 2020 and 2021.
Good luck putting the horse back in the barn at this point. You have now seen not only major companies that you wouldn't have anticipated get involved with this, like a Disney, but you've seen all of the leagues, even the NFL that was so standoffish and so didn't want any of this to happen for the longest time. embracing at this point because they figure you got to go along. Society seems to have moved this direction. Is it too late to stop any of this?
I think it's too late to, as you said, sort of put the horse back in the barn or put the genie back in the bottle. But I don't think it's too late to get things right and to get things better and to make things safer and to add some guardrails.
So how do you do that?
Okay, so there's lots of ideas, and some of which have not been tried yet because lots of states, as we've already been talking about, really have sort of gone all in and have not put these guardrails. But I think measures like limiting the number of deposits someone can make within a certain period, making it easier for someone to withdraw money from the website, making it a little bit harder to deposit money. My byword for all this is friction, and adding friction to the platforms, making it not impossible to bet, not even difficult to bet, but really difficult for someone to bet casually on the Cubs to win, and then get mad and lose more money and lose more money and lose more money, and for that to be sort of the snowball that starts them on a path.
Is there anything wrong though if somebody's betting $5, $10, $15? I mean, I would cite the example of our co-anchor Joe Kernan, who has fun with it, and he really, he went for many months with just a couple $100 in the account and not renewing it at any of those. Like, what's wrong with that?
Nothing. And 60% of NFL bettors account for just 1% of the revenue for sports books. And I think that it should be legal, should be safe, should be accessible. Again, my issue is when it becomes possible for someone to lose their bet, get mad, and that to become the sort of a dangerous journey
like you're cut off. Like if you go up to the bar and the bartender knows you're drunk, you can get in trouble for serving them again.
Exactly, and we have no such provision or protection for gambling companies like we do for alcohol distribution.
How would you even know that or do that? I mean, would you have to have income stratas? I mean, I think of the difficulty of even trying to figure out how much is too much for somebody. If you make more money, then you can play around a lot more. You think of like what Michael Jordan and some other athletes do it for entertainment. They had a lot of money.
I think it's sort of a when you see it. It's like, okay, it's one thing if you're gambling on the NFL or an NBA game. It's another thing if you're gambling like I did last night on a Czech table tennis tournament and the seventh, who's going to win the 7th point of the 3rd game. That to me is like, okay, you're not augmenting your experience with sports.
You're a gambling addict?
I'm not a gambling addict. I just did that to say that I did it when I came on TV. But I think that you're clearly at that point not augmenting your experience with sports. You are chasing a high and sort of chasing a dopamine delivery through gambling wherever you can find it.
I agree with you on this idea that it's not great for society. I've seen what it can do, the damage it can do to people, friends and family. However, I don't love what you're saying I know it when I see it, because if I'm a business and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate the law, that is the worst possible thing you can say.
Fair enough, and I don't want to sound like some big nanny state liberal that Congress needs to come in and tell Congress what to do. I know, but I do think that companies could self-regulate, and I think right now the problem is that there's no sort of incentive to do so. It's if DraftKings were to kick you off their platform, you're just going to move over to FanDuel, and then you're going to move over to BetMGM, and then you're going to move over to
industry standards maybe rather than congressional set sort. But with the threat of Congress saying if you don't regulate yourselves, we're going to regulate you.
I would be thrilled to see that. I mean, as you may remember from the tobacco and alcohol industries, I'm not sort of super confident that those regulations are going to be stringently enforced or they're going to do a lot for player protection. But maybe I'm still naive, but I still think the industry has the time to get it right and can do it itself rather than wait for government to come around and fix it for them.